Hey, Ryan Faulkner here, setthepacetriathlon.com. We're doing another quick little Facebook Live quick tips. And today we're going to talk about tire pressure because it comes in handy. Just got done with 70.3 Memphis last weekend. It rained the entire bike ride, so lessons learned, not the hard way necessarily, but adjusting my tire pressure for the conditions was very important and key and crucial for that race because I wanted to keep both wheels on the pavement and myself upright for the entire bike ride, which I did. But brings up a good point to talk about tire pressure and it's kind of some points. You don't just go with the recommended tire pressure that's on the tires or the tubes and just ride off in the sunset. You want to take a couple of considerations into it and make sure that you're as safe as possible and as quick as possible in the right conditions. So with that, let's just jump right into it. What type of tire and tube do you have? So not all tubes and tires are made the same or for the same pressure. So make sure that you're checking the packaging for the tube and for the tire because sometimes they can be different things. So just depending, if you're getting everything off Amazon and you're kind of mixing and matching, just make sure you read that one thing's not rated for 1 psi, another thing's rated for another, and you overinflate for one of the tires or the tubes. Generally, it's not a problem, but just make sure always read the directions and what the capacities of the tires are. Number two, what comfort level are you looking for? If you got those things really pumped up and they are super solid and they will pretty much send every vibration through the frame into you and you'll feel every crack, every nook and cranny on that road. The less pressure you have in those tires, the more shock they absorb because they take all the pounding and they do the deflecting. So the shock is not sent through the tires and the frame into you. So if you're looking for a little bit of a more comfortable ride, this smaller tire or the lower tire pressure is probably the best bet for you. Now, when I say that, if a tire is rated for like 120, maybe going down to 110 gives you that kind of comfort you're looking for as opposed to 120. When you feel every bump, if you're going on chip seal or something like that, and you're up to the top end of the tire pressure, you're going to feel every bump in that chip seal. Just a heads up for that. Know your course. That kind of goes into the number two there. If it's a rough course, if there's a lot of chip seal on it, if the roads are kind of questionable, if there's bumps, or poor road conditions, maybe go into a lower tire pressure just so you make sure that you get a good, comfortable ride out of is the best course of action. If conversely, if it's just been paved, smooth as glass, man, pump those things up as high as you can get them and reduce the rolling resistance as much as you can, and you're riding off in the sunset. So just make sure you do a little research on the course and the condition of the road to make sure that you're set up for that correctly. And that kind of goes in number four. Speed comes with less rolling resistance. So the higher you have the tire pressure, the less um, deformity you're going to get in the tire as you roll over the pavement. So you're going to get less surface area contact with the actual pavement. So in theory, you're going to be a little bit faster if the tires are pumped up to the highest pressure and they're not deflecting as much when they're on the pavement when you're rolling along the pavement. So just keep that in mind. The higher the pressure, the less rolling resistance you're going to have, especially over, like I said, chip seal and kind of rougher roads. So just keep that in mind. Number five, is it going to be wet? So that's the big one. 70.3 Memphis, it rained the entire bike ride, and the last probably 10 miles, it was just a deluge downpour. There's basically rivers running downhill in the streets. It was nice going into town. It was nice paved streets, but man, it was at least half an inch deep in most places, and then it was pooling in other areas. So it was quite interesting to say the least. So I deflated my tires probably to about 95 psi. Usually I ride around 100, 110. I just deflated 95. I mean, you get a little bit of deflection. It's not super smushy or anything like that. I didn't want to risk, hitting a bump and getting a pinch flat because they weren't inflated enough. But at the same time, I wanted those tires to really deflect on the pavement and give me much surface area traction as possible. There wasn't like anything, there's some 90-degree turns, but I always slowed down and took it safe. Make sure you're just not going to wipe out. It's not worth trying to corner super fast on a wet road, and especially if the rain's running into the road and washing in mud and dirt and everything else. Just be mindful of that. But if it's wet, generally I would lower my tire pressure, and I did that right before the race, just lowered it a little bit, so I just kind of knew by feel what I was going for, and then off I was riding, didn't have any problems. So just keep that in mind. If it's going to rain on race day, if you're riding in wet conditions, you probably want a little bit more surface area contact so you have a little bit more control of your bike when you're going through the water and the puddles and all that fun stuff, which is not that fun. Number 6, will your bike sit out all day for bike check-in? So this is a big problem, especially during the summer here in North America. If your bike sits outside and it's going to be in direct sunlight for hours on end, and you're gonna have to check it in early, it's going to sit out there for 6, 7, 8 hours or something like that in direct sunlight. That black rubber will absorb the sun, get hot, and if you got that thing pumped up to maximum tire pressure, it could possibly go ahead and expand that rubber and everything else a little bit to the verge of just blowing your inner tube. It's happened a lot. People are getting savvy to it, so when they come in and they rack their bike, if they see somebody with a flat tire, they'll get a bib number and post it on the Facebook groups and stuff, so give people a heads up. But if it's going to be hot and you're dropping your bike off fairly early in the day, I would definitely. Sorry, the dog is over here. What are you chewing on? What are you chewing on? Huh? And make sure the dog is not chewing on stuff. What are you chewing on? Say hi. Okay. Chewing on something. Just make sure we're not causing problems over here. Sorry for that time out there. So, where we on? If you're sitting outside in the sun all day, you're going to get sun on those tires. So I would definitely not put them up to maximum tire pressure. There's usually bike techs with pumps there. There's usually people with pumps you can borrow. So maybe deflate it down to 90 psi or something like that. Just enough to hold air. Just in case you can't find a pump, you can still ride them or something like that. But definitely don't air them up with maximum capacity. You're going to sit out in the sun all day, and especially if it's hot. That could cause a problem. Number 7, you get what you pay for. So if you go out and you get the cheapest stuff on Amazon, sometimes you're going to get the quality that you paid for. So just be aware of that. There's good middle range, Continental, some other stuff. And you come here. Come here. The dog's over here chewing on stuff. She's not exactly the best for Facebook Live and doing tips for triathlons. So we'll try to get through this quick. So you get what you pay for. So, there's good, like I said, middle range, Continental, Gator all the other ones. There's plenty of good, reputable brands, middle of the line. You don't have to go with the cheapest ones made, some Chinese brand you never heard of that's going to take 2 weeks to get here from China. So just keep that in mind. I know we're all on the budget, but the last thing you want is a bunch of flat tires on race day because you bought substandard quality materials. So just keep that in mind. You get what you pay for. Number 8, always check your tires into conditions, especially before the race. Personally, I went out and riding the Monday before 7.3 Memphis and ran across something and it slashed one of my tires. It flatted the tire, but I was able to put a tube in and put some electrical tape in there over the gash to make sure that I can get back home okay without my inner tube bulging out. But I had to go back and I changed the tire. The tire was trash, so I put a new tire on. The tube that I used was fine, and then I did another ride on it just to make sure everything was good. So before a big race, especially 70.3s, Ironman races, the last thing you want to do is you have a tire that has a cut in it or something. You don't know about it. You go out there and ride, and you're 50 miles into it, and you get a flat. Especially if you're doing a 70.3, if you get a flat at mile 50. Saw a 70.3 Memphis, poor guy. I think we're a mile like 52, 53. He's alongside the road in the pouring rain, changing out a flat tube. You just don't want that. So make sure that you are paying attention to how old that tube is. If it's been in there for like 2 or 3 years, it's probably time to change it. If it's been in there for less than 6 months, you're probably okay. But just check the quality of your tires. Make sure there's no gashes or cuts in them or anything like that. You just don't want one of those things to pop up on race day. If you got a worn spot, it's questionable. Go ahead and change the tire, man. That's what I'm saying. Check 2 weeks out before to make sure you can change it. You can get a few rides on it. Make sure it's set. Everything's okay. You don't get a pinch flat or anything. But just make sure you're checking on the conditions of your tires or your tubes. Width of the tire and tube play a factor. So you can get down to 22 or you got 28 width. It does make a difference. So look on the packaging, make sure you're paying attention. And not all rims can fit the same width of tires. It can't fit the narrow ones to the wide ones. So make sure that you're paying attention to how wide those tires are, because that will play a factor in air pressure and everything else, and surface contact, and how much of the rubber actually is on the pavement. If it's wider, you're going to get more rubber on the pavement. If it's skinnier, then less rubber on the pavement. So just make sure you're paying attention. The width of the tire actually does make a difference. So read the packaging and make sure you know what width of the tire you're getting. The other factor is in weight. The bike, the gear, So the more weight you're putting on your bike, the more the tires are going to deflect on the road. So if you're at 100 psi and you're out there doing on training days and you're not on, have a full load of hydration and gear and all this other stuff, you're thinking it's good, but then you go out on a race day, you're just like, oh man, it's like I'm, rolling around, I'm stuck in mud. Well, whatever you're putting on your bike on race day, you can have to account for when you're doing your tire pressure. So maybe if you want a stiffer ride and you're riding 110, maybe go up to 115 for race day. Conversely, if you're weighing stuff down, maybe you don't need to deflate your tires as much because you got all that hydration and nutrition on your bike and stuff. So just pay attention. That weight on that you put on that bike does make a difference. Could 5 or 6 pounds could make a little bit of a difference. So just make sure you got that in your mind. Number 11, what does your wheel brand say? There's some that are very particular on what tires and tubes you need to be using with your bike. Especially, we're not even getting into discussion of tubular versus clincher and all this other stuff. Tubular wheels don't even, they have the inner tube built into the actual wheel. There's tubeless. There's all kinds of stuff going on. So make sure that you're paying attention to what, if your wheel brand actually has a recommendation of what tires and tubes you should be using. Sometimes they might be they might require to use a certain brand, their own brand or something like that, before they'll guarantee, just make sure you're reading, the wheels play into each other, the tires, the tubes, everything is comprehensive factors. So if a wheel brand is saying, hey, ours is the best out there, make sure you're reading the fine details of said, well, we recommend Continental tires and these tubes and stuff like that, the width of 22 millimeters, blah, blah, blah. So make sure you're paying attention to what the wheels say because they could also make a difference too. Hopefully that helps you out. Sorry, the distractions there at the dog. I had to make sure that she was not upstairs while I'm doing this video, chasing the cat. I'm down here in the world headquarters at SethBaseTriathlon.com. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Give me a follow. Give it a subscription. And get the dog to stop eating the carpet. we will talk to you later. And hopefully you like this video. And good luck out there with your training.